and what happened in the past elections. It's a book called Wiggly, and it talks about persuasion, so for us to think about how we're getting persuaded for this next upcoming election. And there's Leon. He is helping us read aloud. He's kind of listening, I think. Cognitive dissonance is the beginning of the next lessons that we're learning, and it's on page 48. Cognitive dissonance. Wikipedia gives us a useful definition of cognitive dissonance. In psychology, cognitive dissonance is the mental stress or discomfort experienced by an individual who holds two or more contradictory beliefs or ideas or values at the same time, performs an action that is contradictory to their beliefs, ideas, or values, or is confronted by new information that conflicts with existing beliefs, ideas, or values. The science around cognitive dissonance is deep, but you don't need any depth to be a good persuader. All you need to understand is the basic idea of cognitive dissonance. And this is important. How often it happens in your daily experience. I told you the normal view of the world is that we are rational 90% of the time, and we get a little crazy 10% of the time. The persuasion filter's view of the world is that we're irrational 90% of the time. And one of the biggest sources of this irrationality is cognitive dissonance. The most common trigger for cognitive dissonance, for example, if you believe you are smart and a well-informed person, and then you do something that is clearly dumb, that sends you into a state of cognitive dissonance. And once you are in that uncomfortable state of mind, your brain automatically generates an illusion to solve that discomfort. In this situation, your brain would tell you the new information was inaccurate. The alternative to this belief that you are dumb and that violates your self-image, you don't like to change your self-image unless it is in the direction of an improvement. Our egos prevent us from imagining we are irrational 90% of the time. When we recognize ourselves acting irrationally, the simplest course of action for the brain is to generate an illusion that explains it all away. And so it does. Automatically, the fun part is that we are not aware when it's happening. Others might be able to see it happening in you as of day, but by its nature, cognitive dissonance is invisible, kind of like spot my dog. Kind of have to look for it. When you experience cognitive dissonance, you spontaneously generate a hallucination that becomes your new reality. To outside observers, the hallucination might look ridiculous. But to the person experiencing the hallucination, it makes perfect sense. So the first thing you need to know about cognitive dissonance is that you can often recognize it in others, and they can recognize it in you, but recognizing it in yourself is rare. Trained hypnotists can sometimes recognize cognitive dissonance when they are in it. Cognitive scientists can probably do it sometimes too, but for those of us untrained in the art of persuasion, experiencing cognitive dissonance feels exactly like an accurate view of reality. You can't tell the difference. The first tell for cognitive dissonance is the absurdity of the rationalization. For example, you might be friends with a cigarette smoker who claims smoking won't hurt him because he knows someone who smoked a pack a day and lived to be 100. The person who makes that sort of argument is simply addicted to smoking, but doesn't like to think of himself as being unwise or unable to quit. That would violate the person's self-image. To keep this self-image intact, the smoker generates personal illusion in which he is one of the few people in the world who are immune to lung cancer and somehow know it. We live in an irrational world in which people are continually saying and doing absurd-looking things. Sometimes those people are just dumb, and that's the entire explanation for why they is to look for the trigger is whatever made the person realize that their own actions were in conflict with their self-image. So if a person has too much self-confidence in his own self-control, he has to invent a hallucination for why a smart person with self-control would do such a damaging thing as smoking. That incongruity is the trigger. The person's self-image doesn't match his own actions. The presidential election of 2016 provided the biggest trigger for cognitive dissonance you might ever see in your lifetime. It had all the elements for generating mass hallucinations. From the moment that Trump announced his candidacy, the professional political class started mocking his intelligence, his commitment, his talent, and, most important, his chances of winning. The pundits believe they are smart, and they believe they can see the world for what it is. And in the case of Trump, it seemed to them the easiest prediction in the world, at least for people so well-informed and rational. What mattered the most here, in terms of the trigger, is not that these folks were so wrong. People are wrong all the time, and it doesn't always cause hallucinations. The key variable in this case was their certainty, and it was public certainty, repeated loudly and often. Their opinions of Trump became part of their self-image. They saw themselves as the smart ones, in stark contrast to what they imagined were the Trump supporters with their mullets and pickup trucks. And then Trump won by a comfortable margin, at least in the Electoral College, which is the only place that matters. Trump lost the popular vote, but that was a case of a losing game he wasn't playing. Trump's win was the trigger. The pundits and the voters who believed they were the smart ones suddenly learned they were not. And they learned in the clearest possible way. They were wrong about the voters in swing states. They were wrong to trust the polls. They were wrong to underestimate Trump's intelligence. They were wrong to underestimate his campaign's effectiveness. They were wrong about his need to do traditional advertising. They were wrong about his ground game. They were wrong in thinking that his provocative statements would end him. They were wrong to believe that his alleged scandals would end him. They were wrong about his tweeting being a bad idea. They were wrong that Trump would cause down-ticket Republicans to lose. They were wrong about just about everything. They were so wrong that Republicans came to occupy the White House, control Congress, and eventually control the Supreme Court. That is wrongness on a scale you rarely see. To make matters worse, they had to watch a number of smart people such as Ann Coulter, Mike Cernovich, Stephen Molyneux, and Milo Yiannopoulos. Where's he going over there? Call this entire process correctly from start to finish. If everyone in the world had been wrong about Trump, it would be easier to write it off as a fluke that no reasonable person could have seen coming. That wasn't an option in this case because a number of smart and prominent Trump supporters were right about everything from the start. We gave our reasons loudly and often and showed our work all the way. A year before the election, I said this in my blog. Scott Adams did. Trump's persuasion skills would set off a swarm of competing and wrong explanations for why Trump is defying expectations. In other words, I saw the conditions forming for massive cognitive dissonance long before anyone else mentioned it publicly. As far as I know, that's how a background in persuasion lets you see the future that others can't. It's a learned skill, not a psychic power. If you know what causes cognitive dissonance, you can sometimes see the conditions forming from miles away. And sure enough, Trump's win set off a cluster bomb of cognitive dissonance, the likes of which history rarely sees. To untrained observers of anger, to untrained observers, voters and pundits alike, the public reaction looked like a combination of anger, disappointment, fear, and shock. But to trained persuaders, it was a front row seat to a show of cognitive dissonance so pure and so deep that it was frankly beautiful. Most people didn't appreciate the show. What they saw instead was an endless stream of after-the-fact reasons to explain their new reality in which someone like Trump could get elected. A few days after the election, CNN.com listed 24 different theories from pundits to explain why Trump won. I present them below as entries that don't make complete sense out of the context, But trust me when I say the context doesn't matter in this specific case. Many of the explanations sound quite reasonable, but the credibility of the explanations is not related to my point about spotting cognitive dissonance. The tell is not the quality of the explanations. The tell is how many there are. If you have a situation that can be explained with one reasonable explanation, that reason might be close to reality, but having lots of different explanations is usually a clear tell for cognitive dissonance. Having multiple explanations, no matter how reasonable they sound after the fact, means people are trying to make sense of their observations and they are generating different illusions to do it. Here are some of the explanations for Trump's unexpected win from CNN's article. Number 1, Facebook was unable or unwilling to crack down on fake news. Number 2, social media. Number 3, low voter turnout. Number 4, celebrity outlasts substance. Number 5, white women were more important than anyone thought. Number 6, male restraint. Russian hacking and fake news is number 7. Number 8, the left and coastal elites shamed Trump supporters. Number 9, rural Midwesterners don't get out of the house enough. The Democratic Party establishment didn't push Bernie Sanders. That was number 10. Number 11, Reagan Democrats surged in Michigan and the Midwest. Number 12, the media focused too much on millennial voters, not enough on older white males. Number 13, Gary Johnson and Jill Stein took votes. Number 14, college-educated Americans are out of touch. Number 15, political correctness set off a nasty backlash. Number 16, Trump listened to the American people. Number 17, Americans are biased against the ruling class in Washington, D.C. Number 18, voters believed the system was corrupt. Number 19, Trump remembered the forgotten women of America. Number 20, Democrats focused more on turning out supporters than on growing the base. Number 21, the Democratic National Committee selected the less competitive candidate. Number 22, not because of racism, voters just preferred Trump. Number 23, FBI Director Corney's announcements about Clinton's emails came just weeks before Election Day. And number 24, Clinton was a bad candidate. The media explainers weren't done yet. Some experts pointed out that the candidate of change has a big advantage. So we should have seen it coming. If the change pattern is so predictive, why do the experts use it to predict? Why didn't the experts use it to predict? And why do we believe that all the other Republican candidates would have lost to Clinton, when, after all, they too represented big change? And nowhere in the list of explanations for Trump's win do pundits and pollsters blame themselves for telling Clinton supporters her win was assured. I have to think the media's confidence in her win caused some people to skip voting. So here we are, persuasion tip number 7. It is easy to fit completely different explanations to the observed facts. Don't trust any interpretation of reality that isn't able to predict. Many of the after-the-fact explanations make perfect sense, but keep in mind that it is an easy fit. It's easy to fit a wide variety of explanations to the past. Trial lawyers do it every day. The prosecution and the defense present two different narratives to explain the observed facts, and both can sound convincing. The prosecution says the accused owned the murder weapon, so obviously he's guilty. The defense points out that the accused had roommates and they had access to the gun too, so maybe one of the roommates did it. Same facts, different stories, and both stories can sound perfectly credible. The after-election danger is the next part that we are going to talk about when I see you tomorrow on day 10. Today was day 9. Thanks for listening to Win Bigly by Scott Adams and commenting on it with me and my dog. Like, subscribe, come back tomorrow, and help us think about the election and how we're going to get persuaded and by whom this year.